As you remember, on September 3, 2024, Russia launched one of the most powerful and effective missile attacks on military and energy infrastructure facilities in Ukraine. Back then, independent monitoring services recorded numerous explosions throughout Ukraine, including its western part. In my recent video, I described in detail the result of this missile attack, which not only destroyed strategic military installations of the Ukrainian army and NATO forces, but also claimed the lives of dozens of Ukrainian soldiers and so-called foreign mercenaries from NATO countries. And now, 4 days after this massive Russian missile attack on the territory of Ukraine, reports of mysterious deaths of high-ranking NATO and Pentagon officers began to appear in the Western media again. At the same time, according to the old tradition, Western media continues to claim that the deceased NATO and Pentagon officers were allegedly outside Ukraine, and met their deaths as a result of accidents or some other unexplained factors. However, before moving on to the main topic of this video, I would first like to start by discussing with you a very important statement by Russian President Vladimir Putin. In particular, speaking at the plenary session of the Eastern Economic Forum, Vladimir Putin officially stated that the Russian army had managed to completely stabilize the situation in the Kursk region. According to the Russian president, the adventure of the Ukrainian High Military Command in the Kursk region led to the fact that the Ukrainian army was forced to weaken its presence in key sectors of the front, thanks to which the Russian troops managed to develop an offensive and liberate dozens of settlements in the Donbass. They thought that the invasion of the Ukrainian army in the Kursk region would make us nervous. They thought that we would make a fuss and start transferring troops from one sector to another, which would allow them to stop our offensive in the Donbass, the liberation of which is the main goal of the Russian army. However, our opponents did not succeed, Vladimir Putin said. At the same time, the head of the Russian Federation stressed that the expulsion of enemy forces from the Kursk region and the protection of citizens is a sacred duty of the Russian army. Commenting on Vladimir Putin's words, war correspondents said that the Russian army had indeed managed to completely stabilize the situation in the Kursk region. It is reported that as of September 8, 2024, Russian troops managed to completely evacuate the entire population of the border settlements of the Kursk region, as a result of which the Russian army had its hands free and began to act more decisively, launching artillery and rocket bombing attacks on the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine. According to war correspondents, with each day it becomes more and more difficult for the Ukrainian army to hold its positions in the Kursk region. It is reported that Russian combat aviation is operating non-stop, destroying enemy manpower and equipment with the help of guided aerial bombs of the Fab family. The Ukrainian army also suffers heavy losses in manpower and equipment due to the constant work of Russian multiple-launch rocket systems. Let me remind you that the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation officially announced that as of September 8, 2024, the total losses of the Ukrainian army in the Kursk region amounted to 10,700 soldiers. At the same time, the Russian military department stressed that in the last 24 hours alone, the Ukrainian army had lost 350 soldiers in the Kursk region. Currently, active hostilities in the Kursk region are taking place near such settlements as Maryevka and Cherkaskoy Portnoy. Everything that is happening in the Kursk region now indicates that Russian troops are gradually starting to take the initiative on the battlefield. Commenting on the situation in the Kursk region, well-known war correspondent Alexander Sladkov said that the Ukrainian army had failed in this direction of the front due to two factors. According to him, due to the indecisive actions of the Ukrainian commanders, the armed forces of Ukraine staged very frequent halts in the Sudzhansky district of the Kursk region. Consequently, the Ukrainian army lost precious time and the opportunity to move forward. Secondly, the lightning-fast reaction of the Russian General Staff to the current situation in the Kursk region made it possible to transfer units of the National Guard to this section of the front in the shortest possible time, as a result of which the enemy was completely blocked and lost the opportunity to move deeper into the Russian territory. Returning to the topic of the missile strike on Ukraine, as a result of which the Military Institute of Communications in Poltava was also hit, many drew attention to the fact that the Western media began to make very strange statements. In particular, 2 days after Russian ballistic missiles hit the territory of the Military Institute of Communications in Poltava, as a result of which about 100 Ukrainian militants and foreign military instructors were killed, American newspapers and news channels declared that a high-ranking U.S. Army officer died at a training camp of U.S. troops in the Polish city of Poznan. We are talking about 45-year-old U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Joshua Kamara. At the same time, the Western media did not name the true cause of the death of a high-ranking U.S. Army officer. The only thing the Western media said was that U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Joshua Kamara died on September 3, 2024. Let me remind you that it was on September 3, 2024, that Russian ballistic missiles hit the territory of the Military Institute of Communications in Poltava, where dozens of foreign military instructors were also present in addition to Ukrainian militants. Given the fact that after almost every Russian missile attack on the territory of Ukraine, Western media regularly report accidents, heart attacks, and helicopter crashes in Western countries, as a result of which active duty soldiers and officers of NATO armies allegedly die, one can be sure that U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Joshua Kamara was killed in Poltava during a missile strike on the Military Institute of Communications. Moreover, unnamed sources in the Russian military department confirmed the information that U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Joshua Kamara had been in Ukraine since February 2024, and was training Ukrainian militants, teaching them to use modern communication systems and NATO-style electronic warfare systems.